Hi guys, on Monday Keir Starmer delivered a speech on Brexit where he and his party would try to make it work. Now later that evening, Brexiteer Jacob Rees-Mogg appeared on Newsnight trying to sell the idea that the Office for Budget Responsibility, which provides forecasts to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, is basically engaging in witchcraft and has always been wrong. Now what is he talking about? Well, the OBR stated back in May this year that Brexit had left Britain a less trade-intensive economy because while other countries were working their way out of negative growth during the pandemic, Britain is trailing due to an extra yoke around its neck. The OBR works with both forecasts and data based on previous activity. Its sums indicate that trade as a share of GDP has fallen 12% since 2019. That's a drop 2.5 times bigger than any other G7 country. Overall, it estimates that UK trade volumes were 15% lower than they would have been if Britain remained in the European Union. But let's hear from the guy who told people that Brexit would mean cheap food and cheap shoes.
There are more vacancies than there are unemployed people all over the country. You want growth, you want development. Your 4% GDP problem, according to your own independent
they're
forecasters.
Not my, they're the government's
independent
but the Office of Budget Responsibility has always been wrong.
Do because there's restaurants closed everywhere. There's bus services because you cannot get employees.
The OBR has never got a forecast right.
Okay. Is he correct? Well, technically, yes. Because what they do is they forecast based on the data they have today. Now, in 6 months' time, the situation changes. But that doesn't mean that the forecast was wrong. It just means the forecast based on the data they had was based on the data they had. The idea that you ignore the OBR because they were not, the data that they provided was right at the time they had it and something changed along the road, it's not an excuse for, then you would never make any predictions about anything in any way. And it's important to remember that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, for making his budget, relies on data from the OBR. He doesn't rely on his own data. He relies on independent data from the OBR, saying, okay, this is how much money you would probably take in. This is how much, the cost of living is probably going to go. Is it 100% accurate? Of course not. It's a prediction based on data that we have now. This is very simple. And what's frustrating about all of this is that Jacob Rees-Mogg knows this. He's just lying.
So taking it as holy writ,
like
I think, is a mistake. That's a matter for the Chancellor. But the ABR's never got anything right.
Explain to me how you're going to deal with all these vacancies across so many different sectors.
Well, the issue in relation to employment is one that doesn't just affect the UK. There's a shortage of lorry drivers, for instance, in Poland and in Germany.
And what's the difference between Poland and Germany? They have access to lorry drivers from other parts of the European Union. So if they want to bring drivers in from abroad, they can do that. Well, Britain can, but it's much more difficult. That's the difference. Yes, they have shortages, but they're able to deal with those shortages much better than Britain can.
So this supply of exceptional labour isn't immediately there anywhere. So the issue is, how do you get people back into work? There are over 8 million people in this country, resident in this country, who are economically inactive. And the number has been rising, and lots of people post-pandemic haven't come back into the workforce.
So how...
And obviously many people can't do the jobs that are now being left behind by foreign workers who used to do them. So many people can't do these jobs because, well, they're not trained to do those jobs. They don't pay very well, or they're in locations where they're not located themselves. So there could be a job working on a farm, but that farm is hundreds of miles away. And it's not worth your while. It's not going to pay enough for you to commute every day. This is the problem here. This is why many farms, for example, would bring in labour from abroad. Sometimes they would be living on site, but many British people can't or don't want to do that. This is another reality that Jacob Rees-Mogg doesn't understand.
Would you get them back in? And I would just like to remind you that actually the OBR is the government's official measure.
Yeah, but it's always wrong. I mean,
So does
who,
Boris Johnson not believe in it? Is it only you that doesn't believe in it?
well, you'll have to ask the Prime Minister, but they are forecasters. Forecasting is as accurate as necromancy, that it doesn't actually get things right.
Can you imagine if the OBR had come out with data saying that Brexit was a success? Do you think Jacob Rees-Mogg would be criticising the OBR? No, he'd be saying, look at this wonderful standard that we have. Look at this independent standard, independent commission, independent body, whatever, that is presenting this data. See, clear. It's not just Brexiteers saying that Brexit is a success. Even independent bodies are saying it. He would be championing the OBR. But because it's presenting data, reality, that conflicts with his unicorn reality, of course he's going to dismiss it. Remember, this is a guy who said that food would be cheaper and clothes like footwear would be cheaper post-Brexit. And nobody's challenging him on that. Why aren't they challenging him? Of course, his response would be, that's because of something unrelated to Brexit. So Brexit would make things cheaper, things are more expensive, but that's nothing to do with Brexit. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.